foggy night in Liverpool, the Oliver family lived in an old house in the Anfield district. James Oliver, the father, was a dock worker, and his wife, Amelia, was a primary school teacher. They had 3 children: Harry, 18, Isla, 15, and Joseph, 10. That night, James returned home later than usual. His face was pale, and his gaze was empty. Amelia asked worriedly, "James, are you all right? Did something happen?" James shook his head and said, "It's nothing, dear. I'm just a bit tired." But Amelia knew something was different. James went to the bedroom and closed the door behind him. Throughout the night, strange noises came from the parents' bedroom. Isla, whose room was next to theirs, heard heavy breathing and muffled groans. She thought to herself that perhaps her father was ill. The next morning, James didn't come out of the room. Amelia said he was sick and needed rest, but there was something in her voice that worried the children. Days passed, and James remained in the bedroom. Amelia brought him food and water, but no one saw him. The sound of the bedroom door locking every time Amelia came out frightened the children. One night, Harry heard an argument from his parents' room. He heard his mother pleading, "James, please, this isn't you. We need to get help." His father's harsh and unnatural voice replied, "No one can help. I'm changing Amelia. I can't stop it." Harry looked at his siblings with fear. They had heard the voices too. Isla said in a trembling voice, "What do you think is happening to Dad?" Little Joseph said with a lump in his throat, "I'm scared. What's happening to Dad?" Harry tried to be strong and said, "Don't worry. There must be an explanation. We'll talk to Mom tomorrow." But tomorrow never came. At midnight, a terrible scream came from the parents' room. Harry jumped up and ran to the room. The door was locked. "Mom, Dad, what happened?" he shouted. A raspy voice came from behind the door. "Stay back, children. Everything is fine." But the voice didn't belong to their father. It was a voice that froze the blood in their veins. In the days that followed, the house fell into a deathly silence. Amelia didn't come out of the room, and James had disappeared. Harry decided to go to the police station, but before he could do that, something terrible happened. One night, the sound of the parents' bedroom door opening was heard. Harry, Isla, and Joseph came out of their rooms in fear. In the hallway, they saw a creature that was once their father. James Oliver was no longer human. His skin was as white as chalk, and his eyes glowed with a red glint. His canine teeth had grown long and sharp, and blood was dripping from the corners of his lips. "My dear children," his voice was hoarse and unnatural, "your father has returned, and he's very, very hungry." Isla screamed and Joseph started crying. Harry threw himself in front of his siblings and shouted, "You're not our father. What kind of creature are you?" James let out a laugh that sounded more like a growl. "Oh, I'm still your father, just improved, stronger. And now it's time for you to become like me." With incredible speed, James attacked the children. Harry tried to resist, but his father's strength was superhuman. In a matter of seconds, all 3 children were on the ground, and James was leaning over them. "Don't be afraid, my children. The pain will only last for a moment. After that, we'll be an eternal family." Harry used all his strength to try to free himself and his siblings. In a moment of James's distraction, He managed to grab Joseph and run towards the exit. Isla also managed to escape, but her scream indicated that James was right behind her. Harry shouted, "Isla, run! Get out of the house!" The three children ran out of the house in terror. The cold night air burned their skin, but they just kept running. The sound of their father's demonic laughter came from behind. "You can't escape from me. You belong to me." They ran towards the neighbor's house, the Mason family. Thomas Mason, their father's old friend, opened the door upon hearing the children's screams. "What's happening? Harry? Isla? Joseph? Why at this time of night?" His words were cut short when he saw James approaching the house at an unnatural speed. Thomas paled at the sight of his friend's transformed face. "Jesus Christ, James, what's happened to you?" James, with a smile that revealed his sharp teeth, said, "Oh, dear Thomas, you can join us too. A new world awaits us." Thomas quickly pulled the children inside the house and slammed the door shut. "Hurry, go to the basement." In the Mason's basement, Thomas quickly began to explain. "Listen, your father and I, we were members of a secret group, a group whose job was to protect people from the forces of darkness." Harry angrily said, "If that's the case, then why couldn't you prevent this? Why is our father now a monster?" If you enjoyed it so far, please hit the subscribe button if you liked the video. Thomas sighed. "We thought we had eliminated all the vampires, but we were wrong. A week ago, James contacted me. He said he encountered something strange at the dock. We thought it was just a wild animal, but now I understand. It was a vampire." The sound of breaking glass came from upstairs. Joseph clung to his older brother in fear. "Harry, I'm scared. Is Dad coming after us?" Harry tried not to let his voice shake. "Don't be afraid, Joseph. We won't let him hurt us." Thomas quickly went to an old chest and opened it. Inside was a collection of wooden stakes, silver crosses, and bottles of holy water. "Listen, vampires are powerful, but they have weaknesses. Sunlight burns them. A wooden stake through the heart can destroy them. And of course, decapitation," Isla said in horror. But he's still our father. We can't." Thomas quickly stood in front of the children and held up his cross. "James, come to your senses. This isn't you." James laughed, sounding more like a growl. "Oh dear Thomas, this is me. Just better than before. Why don't you want to accept this? We can all become immortal together." Harry shouted, "We don't want to be like you. You're a monster." James attacked them with incredible speed. Thomas tried to fend him off with holy water, but James was too strong. With one blow, he knocked Thomas against the wall. "Children, run!" Thomas shouted. Harry grabbed his siblings' hands and ran towards a secret door that Thomas had shown them earlier. They entered the dark and damp tunnels beneath the city. James's scream echoed behind them. "You can't escape. I'll find you." Harry, Isla, and Joseph ran through the dark and damp tunnels under Liverpool. The sound of water dripping from the ceiling and rats scurrying in the corners were the only sounds breaking the deathly silence. Joseph said breathlessly, "Harry, I can't run anymore." Harry stopped and looked around. They were at a crossroads and didn't know which path to choose. Isla said fearfully, "Do you think he managed to follow us?" Harry tried not to let his voice shake. "I don't know, but we can't stay here. We need to find a way out of these tunnels." They chose the path to the right and set off. Every sound made them tremble with fear. They didn't know how much time had passed. but it seemed like they had been walking for hours. Suddenly, a laugh echoed from afar, a voice that belonged to their father, but now full of malice and violence. "My dear children, where are you hiding? Your father is coming." Joseph started crying. Isla put her hand over his mouth to muffle his sobs. Harry said in a low voice, "We need to find a hiding place. Hurry." They moved quickly through the tunnels until they reached an old chamber. It looked like it had once been an underground shelter. Harry closed the door and barred it with an iron rod. This should be safe, at least for a while. Hours passed. The children fell asleep from exhaustion. Harry tried to stay awake and keep watch, but gradually his eyes grew heavy. He was startled awake by a rustling sound from outside. Footsteps were approaching the door. His heart was pounding. His father's voice came from behind the door. "I know you're in there, children. I can smell your fear. Why don't you open the door? Your father has come." Harry quickly woke Isla and Joseph. "We need to get out of here. Hurry." They went towards a hatch in the floor of the room. Harry struggled to open it. Just then, the room's door broke with a loud crash, and James entered. "Did you think you could escape from me?" Harry shouted. "Go down. Hurry." Isla and Joseph went down through the hatch. Harry followed them and tried to close the hatch, but James's hand caught it. "My son, why are you resisting? We can be an eternal family." Harry pushed the hatch with all his strength and managed to close it. He could hear James's angry scream from above. They were now in a narrower tunnel. Harry turned on the small flashlight he had taken from Mr. Mason's house. "This way. We need to find a way to the surface." After hours of walking, they finally saw a light at the end of one of the tunnels. "There. I think it's a way out." They ran towards the light. As they got closer, they realized the light was coming from a sewer grate that opened onto the street. Harry, with Isla's help, opened the grate, and they came to the surface. They breathed in the fresh morning air greedily, but their joy was short-lived. A growl came from behind them. James came out of the grate, but as the sunlight touched him, his skin began to burn. "No, damn it." He retreated back into the tunnel, but before disappearing, he looked at his children with eyes full of hatred. "This isn't over. When night falls, I'll come for you again. Nowhere is safe." Harry, Isla, and Joseph stared in horror at where their father had disappeared. They now knew that their lives had changed forever. Harry decided, "We need to find a safe place. Somewhere Dad can't find us," Isla said worriedly. "But where?" "We don't have any money," Joseph asked in a trembling voice. "Can we go to Aunt Sarah's?" Harry thought for a moment. Aunt Sarah, their mother's sister, lived in the suburbs. Maybe she could help them. "That's a good idea, Joseph. But we need to be careful. We don't want to put her in danger too." They moved cautiously through the streets, trying not to attract attention. Finally, they reached Aunt Sarah's house. Sarah was shocked to see her sister's children in such a disheveled state. "What happened? Where are Amelia and James?" Harry began to explain in a shaky voice. At first, Sarah didn't believe it, but when she heard the details and saw the terror in the children's eyes, she realized they weren't lying. "My God, I can't believe it. But don't worry, I'll take care of you." Days passed, and the children took refuge in Aunt Sarah's house. But they knew the situation couldn't continue. James searched for them every night, and each time he got closer. One night, the sound of breaking glass came from downstairs. Harry knew the time for the final confrontation had come. Aunt Sarah, take Isla and Joseph upstairs. I'll face him. Sarah protested. No, Harry. He's too dangerous. But Harry was determined. It's the only way. I have to end this. Harry went downstairs with a wooden stake and a silver cross he had brought from Mr. Mason's house. James was standing in the middle of the room, his eyes glowing in the darkness. Finally, we're alone, my son. Now, do you understand that resistance is futile? Harry said firmly, You're not my father anymore. You're a monster that needs to be destroyed. James laughed and attacked Harry. A long and difficult battle ensued between them. Harry came close to defeat several times, but the thought of his brother and sister gave him strength. At a crucial moment, Harry managed to press the cross against James's chest. James screamed in pain and stepped back. Harry took advantage of this opportunity and drove the wooden stake into his heart. James looked at his son in disbelief. Harry, I'm sorry, and then turned to ash. As the sun rose, Harry, Isla, and Joseph cried in each other's arms. They had lost their parents, but they had each other. Aunt Sarah promised to take care of them. You're not alone anymore. We'll get through this together. Harry looked at his siblings. We're stronger than we thought. Whatever happens, we'll stick together. As the sun rose higher and a new day began, they knew their lives had changed forever. But together, they could overcome any darkness.